What's going down, Buster Brown? What's going down? So, hey, anyway, listen, me and a buddy went to see that movie Warfare yesterday. And, maybe your feed's different than mine, but all the reviews I'm seeing online for this movie say it's like the best thing since sliced bread and very exciting and all that. And it's kind of a touchy issue because, it's a vet made movie about vets, and I think largely it's for vets. And I want to talk about it because the movie's good, but it's not great. And it's certainly not, I don't believe, Oscar worthy. I didn't notice anything special about the sound, but we're going to talk about that. But before I talk about that, let me give you an idea about how I judge these things. And listen, this is not about, don't get all, you can't get all emotional about this stuff. This is a movie, this is an honest opinion. And, I may not be an expert in a lot of things, but I guess what I am an expert in? Loving and watching movies. That's what I do. I love it, okay? I grew up as a kid in the 70s. I've seen all the great movies of the 70s, that a kid could see. I saw them in the movie theater. So, Jaws, Star Wars, all of them. All of them. So, when I judge a movie, I try not to include the nostalgia and, who I saw it with, those things that have nothing to do with the movie at all, the accoutrement. So, let me start by talking about how I judge actors, okay? Because they're the main players in the movie, right? So, first of all, I want you to think about something. We're going to talk about tier one actors, okay? A tier one actor is somebody like Clint Eastwood or John Wayne or Christopher Walken, right? Those are tier one actors. And guess what they all have in common? They play themselves. Did you ever hear John Wayne? I mean, he may have, but did you ever hear John Wayne do movie accents? Or Walken or any of those? Nicholson? No, the ironic part about tier one actors is they play themselves being somebody else, right? So if you see a movie with Jack Nicholson, you know exactly what you're getting. You're getting Jack Nicholson with a different guy's name, right? Tier one actors play themselves. They have big personalities. They're so big, they can carry another name. So those are tier one actors, okay? What I would consider to be the best. They're the ones whose personalities are so big, they don't have to play a character, right? You go to see them. Clint Eastwood, Forgiven, El Camino, whatever it is, it's Clint Eastwood. John Wayne, True Grit, whether he's a Green Beret or a rancher, it's the same. It's the same, right? And so there weren't any who I would consider tier one actors in this movie. Okay. Now maybe it slipped by me. Maybe it'll come to me after I film this. But I don't remember any tier one actors. And let me say too, I was comparing this as I watched it to Black Hawk Down. Right? I was comparing it to Black Hawk Down. And it wasn't that either. So talk about the actors in the movie a little bit. They're all very young and largely unknown. You recognize their faces, right? You may recognize their faces from other things. And they do a fantastic job. They do a fantastic job doing what they're doing. And, part of the plight of the actor is he can only do so much, right? He has to work with the script he's been given. So, I don't remember any of the actors being fed any zinger lines. I don't remember any stingers. I don't remember any stingers from the movie, and that's important for a great movie. And I can think of a great stinger from Black Hawk Down, and it's still, at least in the gun tube community, it's a big deal, This is my safety. This is my safety, sir. There's a number of lines in that movie. We have a Black Hawk Down. We have a Black Hawk Down. There's a ton of little stinger lines, and I don't remember one from this movie. There was no line that any of these young actors could latch onto, I don't think, that could be a career-making line, right? Like, I'll be back, you know? There weren't any of those in the movie. And I think, to be a great movie, you got to have actors, whether they're unknown or not, with personalities. There's got to be somebody in there with the personality big enough to bust through the character, okay? For it to be, or it's just got to be, okay, I could think of an Oscar performance that was over the top and it had nothing to do with the personality of the actor, and she deserved the Oscar, and it was Renee Zellweger in Judy, the story of Judy Garland. She was so fantastic, man. Fantastic work. Truly acting that part out. And she was amazing, right? And, of course, I can't remember any lines from that. I'm sure they're in there, but I remember her performance, and I can remember the way she walked on stage. I can remember not believing it was Renee Zellweger, thinking to myself, "Holy cow! How is someone doing this? No wonder they're crazy, right? You really have to lose yourself to pull that off." And losing yourself isn't harmless. We think we think just because we don't bleed or we don't lose a part of our body that it's not like that. When we mess with our psychology, becoming somebody else for a long period, extended period of time, becoming somebody else for an extended period of time, it can't be psychologically easy. Because I think I said this in another video, your mind can't really tell the difference between make-believe and what's real. That's why the Army shoots at humanoid-shaped targets. So the brain gets used to shooting humans. So anyway, none of the wonderful actors in this movie were fed any lines that could make their careers, okay? There were no career-winning lines in the movie, right? And, the other thing about the movie is that there wasn't really a secondary event. There was one thing going on, right? You saw it completely from inside the house, like in the movie Black Hawk Down, there's an incident. The Black Hawk crashes. Okay, well, first they go for a snatch and grab, a capture kill, right? They go for a capture kill, and a helicopter gets shot down. And so now they have a big problem. They're split up. The helicopters, they've got to go secure the helicopter and wait for rescue. They've got to transport prisoners. They have wounded. It's a fucked up tangle afoot, And so there's a lot going on. And the other thing about the movie was, the visuals and the special effects, there were some flaws there. Like, I think Bradley comes down at one point and hammers a rooftop, and the rooftop is kind of still there, And you can see, like, marks on the wall where the rounds would have been striking, and you can see where it was just not... effects-wise, and they could have filmed it maybe to look better, but it wasn't, I didn't think that part was done well, the effects. And, so visually, I would just say the movie was mediocre war film-wise, and see, I'm comparing it to Black Hawk Down again, There's some great shots. When one of the soldiers gets some brass down his collar that comes from a helicopter, there's this zoom-in shot of the minigun just shredding and kicking out brass, and you can hear it. You can hear the brass, and they slowed it down a little, so you could really catch a feel for it. There wasn't any of that trickery in the movie. And, so in the movie, these guys are locked in the house, and basically, they try to evac on in Bradley's, and they just get chewed up, right? So they go back in the house and wait. And it really is about an hour long screaming, an hour's worth of screaming. Two guys getting their legs blown out and screaming on the floor, and sporadic gunfire and things like that. And there's some stuff, there's some gun handling stuff that looks very commercialized. That's the only way I can say it. It looked overproduced, and you know, I'm sure it was technically correct, but it still looked the way it was depicted made it look very stagey, the way I can say it. It didn't look organic at all, you know. It didn't look organic at all. And so I would say, you know, that was another flaw of the movie. It just didn't have that vibe. It looked like somebody was making a movie. It looked like somebody was making a movie. It was hard to get absorbed. I was waiting for something to happen, you know, to draw me in deeper. But it's really just an hour and a half of these guys stuck in this home that they took over with these hostages. And there's not much from the hostages and the family in there either. They're just kind of kept in a room. And you see them kind of pissed off once in a while. But as far as that goes, they're just kind of there, you know. They're just kind of there. And so for an hour, these guys are stuck in the house. And the leader, I guess their commander, the officer in charge had received a concussion from one of the blasts. So he was feeling woozy, or something wasn't right with him. And it just wasn't communicated well. It almost looked it almost looked like the actor was ad-libbing what to do, and then people were kind of feeding off him, because I got the sense when I watched him playing out the part, I got the sense that he was wondering himself what he was doing, like the actor, like, what am I doing? He looked confused. The actor looked confused playing the part. So, you know, that's weird. But yeah, he looked confused playing the part. Not just confused as the officer in charge from a concussion, you know. And here's the other thing, and this is why I said it. I think it's like it's a movie for guys who are in theater, you know, who took that on, because, you know, it's a lot of suffering, it's a lot of violence and suffering, you know. There was, and I don't want to say it, I feel, you know, I don't want a bunch of vets coming after me, you know, about this, because I know, believe me, I know how important it is to the heart and soul, you know. So when I say this, there was nothing special about that mission at all. That happened a million times probably in Iraq. A bunch of guys go in the house, they get casualties, and they can't get out. So they're kind of stuck. I'm sure that happened a million times. That was the other thing, you know. This wasn't like Ramadi. I mean, from what I hear, Ramadi was popping off like nobody's business. It was popping off. You know, it's like the, you know, if you were in theater and you were in Ramadi, bro, you were in the shit, from what I understand. And so those incidents, I would imagine, or incidents like them, were a dime a dozen. And so when I was watching it going, what's so special about this? I feel bad these guys got themselves into the situation. I mean, they volunteered, you know. And so it's a sucky situation to be in. But anyway. So, you know, I was really surprised when the movie was over. It went faster than I thought it was going. I was thinking I still had another half hour left of it when it ended. And to be honest with you, I was glad it ended. It's not great. And it's not worth going out to see. It's, you know, I would wait until you can rent it. I mean, unless you're really close to that. I mean, if you had somebody served, if you lost somebody there, I think it'd be great to go see it. I think you should support the vet who made it, and all that stuff. But if you're looking for an Oscar level war movie, you're not going to find it in Warfare at all. Not even close. Not even close. There's not a single performance in there. And if there is, we've lowered our standards because there's nothing in there. But anyway, isn't that something? Movies are great. And the cinematography. And my buddy even said, my buddy said to me, he's like, yeah, there wasn't that much fighting. There wasn't that much gunfighting. And when there was, it was just blind fire. It was a lot of blind fire, it seemed. Spraying and praying. Which makes sense. What else are you going to do? Not criticizing that. I'm just saying, sucks to watch it in a movie. It's pretty freaking boring, So, anyway, take it with a grain of salt. You might love the movie, and I might be all wet. But, if you want to come at me. That'd be great. I can stand my ground. I know I stand on solid ground here. So, anyway, God bless you. Go in peace and serve the Lord. Nuke Lutheran.